Now, if you could introduce to everyone the first position HELOC and what that really means in relation to a mortgage and a HELOC and a checking account.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. So a first lien HELOC is a type of home loan. We know that. And it just follows different rules than a mortgage. Okay. The word HELOC is in there. So the factors that make it a HELOC and the factors that make a second lien HELOC a HELOC are the way that money can flow and the way that they calculate their interest payment. And so whether it's a first lien HELOC or whether it's a second lien HELOC, they're both open-ended loans. So money can go in and money can come out, right? If we compare that to a mortgage is a closed-ended loan where money can only go in. You can only pay down principal. You can never take the money back out. It's just how it's structured. So a first lien HELOC and a second lien HELOC are the same in that money can go in and out freely. And they do calculate their interest differently than a mortgage does, an amortized mortgage. Okay. So instead of using your previous month's end balance, right, both HELOCs are going to, instead of using your previous month's end balance against the rate to calculate your payment, they use what's called the average daily principal balance. And what that means is it takes the average of every single day's balance throughout the previous month, and it uses that average against your rate to calculate your cost. So that's how they're the same, and that's how first and second lien HELOCs are the same, and how they differ from mortgages. Now, between a first and second lien HELOC, the way that people usually think about HELOCs in terms of the second lien is it's an extension of credit on top of your existing mortgage, right? Okay. So a first lien HELOC is different. A first lien HELOC is a refinance. A first lien HELOC pays off your mortgage just like a refinance does. And what it does is it, instead of having two loans, right? Instead of having an amortized loan and an open-ended loan HELOC, it gives you one big open-ended loan. And what you end up with is it pays off your mortgage and you have a balance, right? Which was your mortgage's balance, right? And given that you have available equity above that, you can access that as well. So in this scenario, as you pay down your balance with your HELOC, with your first lien HELOC, you still have access up to your, we call it the line amount, but your limit, right? If I don't like to compare to credit cards too much, just because the reputation, but a good way to think about it is sort of comparing with that, which is that with a first lien HELOC, you have a limit and you have your balance. So in this scenario, it is a HELOC, but it fully pays off your mortgage, right? You end up with a balance and then the limit. Okay. So that's really what this is, and what we what we work with. But that's how it's different than both of those, and also similar in a way.
So can you use a first position HELOC to purchase a new asset, a new property, or can it only be used to refinance an existing property?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from what I understand, and I'm not the authority in terms of what all banks can do, but from what I understand, most banks won't do a purchase for a first lien HELOC. We do. And so we can do purchases for a first lien HELOC. So in that scenario, right, you would put your down payment down, right? And depending on what the threshold is, you'd put that down. And then what you'd be left with is a maxed out first lien HELOC, because we would fund the rest of the purchase, right, with that. And instead of having an amortization or an amortized payback structure, you would have a payback structure for a certain period of time that's an open-ended line of credit, right? And that, so when we do a purchase, that's usually what that looks like.
Got it. Okay, so essentially you're actually getting simply the HELOC as the mortgage, and you're paying the HELOC that obviously then makes available credit on that HELOC that you can access. And now, is there any other functionality or features of this account? Does it come with a checkbook or anything like that?
Good question. So so ours does, and the reason why we built it this way, I think we'll probably end up getting to, because there's a specific way to work within the rules of this loan, right? You can choose to do whatever you want. You could choose to just make the interest payment every month. Well, if you did that, your balance would never go down. That isn't what we hope for. That isn't what we teach, right? What we teach is we actually teach people how to work within the rules of this loan, right? Because they're different than a mortgage, right? And and the way that we teach that is just a way to optimize or fully leverage the way this loan works to drive down your balance much faster than you can with a mortgage, safely. And I can kind of go into that too. But yeah, so the way that our first lien HELOC works is through a checking account, and meaning with most HELOCs, whether it be a first lien HELOC or a second lien, it's a fully separate account. And so what that means is if you're ever going to pay down your principal, you have to direct deposit to your checking, and then you have to log in and you have to place the transfer to have the money moved into your HELOC. That's how the money gets there usually, right? And then if you ever want to take it back out, you have to log in and place the transfer to have money moved from your HELOC back into your checking just to be able to access it. That's usually how that works, right?
Right.
Well, with the strategy that we teach, which we can get into as well, that ends up being a pretty great burden. It doesn't sound like a big deal if you're making a transfer once a month, right? Or if you're going to buy an investment property for X amount and you want to do one big deal and you need $50,000, I'm going to take 50,000, I'll transfer it. That isn't a big deal. But that's also not the way to optimize this loan, right? That's not the way to best work within this loan. And so that's why we created it this way. So with our first lien HELOC here at First Savings Bank, we've built it so it's actually connected to our bank's checking account. It's the same checking account that all of our retail customers use. And here it's connected to the HELOC. The checking account is connected to the HELOC. And there's actually a nightly sweep. It's a bi-directional sweep that goes both ways. And it reacts to your checking balance that day. So if we think about getting money into your home loan, right, into your HELOC, paying down your balance, the way you do that here is you strictly deposit money into the checking, and that's it.
Okay. Wow.
Because that night, well, what happens is the checking account, it's actually a zero balance checking, which is a little bit different. So every morning it shows a zero balance. So when you deposit money into the checking, it shows a positive balance of X amount. So if you deposit 5,000 in, that day, the checking account shows a positive balance of 5,000. Well, that night when the sweep function looks at the checking, it sees the positive balance of 5,000 and it pushes the money automatically into your home loan, into your HELOC right away. Okay. That night. Next morning, your HELOC's balance is decreased by that amount and your checking account shows zero again, right? So if we think about then using your HELOC to spend money, right? If you need to borrow from it for whatever reason, all you do is use your checking account in the same way that you do with your current right now. It has all the features that any checking account would. So we didn't fabricate a new checking account for this product. We actually used the same checking account that
it's just connected to the HELOC.
Exactly, right?
And so it's real time.
Real time, yeah.
If I look and see whatever available credit I have in my HELOC, I know that's what I can write a check for.
That's what you can write a check for, right? And so let's say you write a check and your balance is zero, and suppose you write a check for $500. What happens to your checking is it actually goes into the negative, which most banks would see as an overdraft. Well, we don't, because we know that your money is not stored in the checking. Your money is stored in the HELOC, right? And so we don't consider that an overdraft. And then that night, the opposite happens when the sweep feature looks at it. It sees the negative balance in the checking, and it actually pulls money, it sweeps money from the HELOC into the checking to reimburse the checking back to zero, which just increases your HELOC's balance, essentially paying for the things that you spent money on that day, right? Or that you borrowed, that you spent.
Very interesting. So, very, very, very cool.
Yeah.